Welcome to this edition of A Stellar Conversation, and we're happy to have back Lisa Bundy, CEO and founder of CarGirlCapital.com. Lisa, welcome and thank you for coming back.
Thank you. Glad to be back.
So let's pick up on what we talked about in the earlier podcast that we shot some time back. I'm really intrigued by some of these other, I'll call them new opportunities that in particular credit unions, but I know you deal with banks and finance companies as well as hedge funds. But in our space, a lot of what we do on the auto loan side, the refinancing side, is strictly with credit unions. But let's talk, give us a good overview, because I'm really interested in, and I know you're starting to get quite a bit of traction with solar loans and the sale of those portfolios. Can you give us a good kind of understanding of how that's come about and the value of those types of loans versus the traditional commercial auto, all of the others that have commonly been in place?
Solar, about a year and a half ago, we started connecting, me and some of the other brokers that we kind of network and work together, um, connected with a solar originator. And so that brought up exactly what solar loans were and how they were structured and what this was based on. So I did quite a bit of research on that. Solar loans primarily are for the purchase and installation of solar panels, along with whatever equipment is necessary to run that. In some cases, it's battery storage. In some cases, it's not. That's an option. And then they're financed so that the payments are similar to what your utility bill would be. And you're actually replacing, you're not adding a debt, you're replacing a debt. But you're also looking at people who own their homes. You're looking at people who, have an average income of about $110,000, average Beacon score of in the 700s. This is definitely a prime credit type asset. So along the way, we were able to connect with a couple of credit unions that were already putting these loans on their books. And I believe in probably the last 6 to 9 months, I've sold about 100 million in those solar pools. Demand for those have gone up just astronomically for two reasons. One, it's got a decent yield and it's actually a little bit better than an auto loan, even though it is a little longer in term. But two, because the auto loan pools that we were seeing were in such high demand that there's not enough of them. So the supply was definitely less than what the demand was. So a lot of credit unions, and banks included, had to move into a different asset, look at a different vehicle in order to get some of the yield they were looking to get. In doing that, we also found that there was an opportunity for credit unions to originate solar loans for both their members and for the, getting new members within their footprint. And that has become also, with the credit unions that want to create their own pools, we are also seeing that. And it's kind of similar to how the indirect auto space started probably 20 years ago. This is very similar. There's a lot of similarities there, a lot of things that you can pull into this. But the other thing that's driving solar is the fact that the solar credits, and I believe it's called the investment tax credit, ITC, is set to sunset by 2024. And unless the current administration chooses to extend it, it's being phased out. I believe it's at 26% this year, 24% next year, or 22% next year, and then it will phase out by 2024. So anyone who wants to take advantage of that is also looking to put solar on their house. And then, of course, we have what happened in the South, in Texas, a month ago, where people lost electricity for days at a time. Obviously, solar would have been an offset for that.
So the traction that you've gotten so far, has it been with banks or credit unions or both?
Both, both.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. So, this has been in the business for 20 years, seen a lot, heard a lot of good stuff, a lot of stuff that I just have shaken my head as to why we do what we do. Um, The frustrating thing from my perspective at times is just getting people to listen to new ideas. The number one question that I've gotten in 20 years is, what's the next big thing? And more times than not, there isn't a next big thing. But when you try to talk to somebody about what you think might be the next big thing, they kind of shut down. And so I give you credit for having made some inroads. We're going to run into the same thing when it comes to student loan debt. I mean, Goldman Sachs just came out and estimated $211 billion worth of that debt should be refinanced. Now, we know the government is looking right now at whether they're going to forgive some portion of that debt, but there's $1.6 trillion out there. And the default rates for people that have advanced degrees or even undergrad degrees are very low.
Mm-hmm.
If you get below that, they start to trickle up quite a bit. But to begin to have those conversations is just going to take time. When I first got into this business, I started, actually it was a vendor of mine. And that vendor had a consultant, and the guy's name was Ralph Haberfeld. And Ralph Haberfeld actually is the guy that invented free checking. He had the concept in the late 70s. And it took him 10 years to convince the industry that from a fee income standpoint, you're better off giving away the checking account. Now, you see what happened between 1990 and 2009. Practically everybody offered free checking. But it took that guy 10 years to get traction with that concept. Now, in many ways, that's kind of gone away and fees are back on checking accounts. But the only frustrating thing for me in this industry over the years has been, I get that question, what's the next big thing? And when I want to talk about what I think might be maybe not the next big thing, but the next thing, it's really hard to get traction. So back to your soul, how did you end up? I mean, that first deal must have been a heck of a selling job.
Absolutely. Well, here's the thing, there's different personalities out there within every industry. And I guess I took my lead from the car business in the fact that being in the car business for so long, they fought internet sales, they fought online everything, they fought one price, they fought every bit of it. And every bit of that has come to fruition. And they have been the last ones on the bus to understand that. And yet the ones that got a hold of it and did something about it or implemented it, they actually were the ones during COVID and during this time that they have just killed it. Well, the same thing in the bank and credit union world. You've got the people who nobody wants to be the first guy on the bus. They want somebody else to do it, and then they'll look at it and think about it. So it's just a matter of trying to figure out the personality of the person you're talking to. And also with credit unions, it's also about the board. What is the objective and the initiative of the board? So, I do a lot of research on the people that I'm talking to and what they've done in the past, how open they are to new ideas. But ultimately, you put it out there and eventually they'll start. And I forward a lot of articles and research so that I can try to, because that's part of my job. My job is to educate and to help them make better decisions by giving them more information that they don't have time to go out and find.
Right. It's I had a long conversation, Roger Powell, and he's going to be our next guest on a stellar conversation. And we had a long conversation a couple of weeks ago about banks buying credit unions and credit unions buying banks.
Yep.
Never thought about that concept, 5 years ago?
No, absolutely not.
Happening today. Back when I was in the newspaper industry, I went to the Wall Street Journal. I was a local newspaper in DC. I went to the Wall Street Journal and said, why can't I print your newspaper? And they said, well, you're a competitor. I said, but I can print it for a lot cheaper than what you can print it. And they said, well, let's look at it. 2 years later, they were printing 11 locations nationwide. So,
Wow.
and Brian Jones, he's going to be a guest here on a stellar conversation. He's both a competitor and a strategic partner.
Mm-hmm.
So, those of us that I'll call us on the vendor side, we're kind of forced to look for opportunities. We're kind of forced to react to market conditions. I just want to keep pushing my clients to have kind of the same mindset, but they do have a board. You and I don't have a board to answer to, so we can kind of cut and paste whenever we want and pivot whenever we feel like it's time to pivot. So I understand the kind of the roadblocks, but from our perspective, we're going to keep pushing things that we think are being missed by the community banking space. When you look at student loan debt, the top players in student loan debt are all online, and they're doing a lot. And they're doing a lot of business because it's profitable business, and the risk in certain portions of that portfolio is minimal. So I guess people like you and I, we just keep pushing, and we keep bringing ideas to the table, and occasionally more times than not they don't, but I think there's a lot of opportunity. What we've gone through in the last 14 months has forced everybody to look at their business different, and I just hope that we can get some traction with I know we're talking with our clients, and I know their mindset's different than it was a year ago, and they're thinking a little bit differently. I realize the roadblocks and the kind of the hoops that they have to jump through, but I'm in hopes that, because we're big supporters of the community banking space, and that's who we do business with. And it's frustrating to see sometimes where opportunities are missed and their competitors are taking advantage of it. So kudos to you on the solar side, and we'll see if we have success on the student loan debt side. And we're going to have also, when I speak with Roger Powell, who's basically in the M&A business, we're going to talk about the portfolios that he runs into occasionally that, again, are very similar. And I don't know if you've had conversations with him, but they're very similar to your solar portfolios in terms of credit worthiness. Timing might be a little bit different, but I think it's an exciting time. I know that every time I talk to you, I get motivated a little bit more, because you're always kind of thinking forward. Maybe it's that old the days from when you ran that car dealership on the corner, that that kind of personality. But I really hope that what we see happening right now isn't just a fad where people are kind of opening up. The bankers that we work with are kind of opening up to new ideas, and that they continue with that aggressive approach to looking for other opportunities for growth. Because if we all just stick to our core business, eventually somebody will take us out, and our business will continue to decline. We've seen it over and over again over the years. There were probably 15 people in my space when I started 20 years ago. There's probably, I'm talking about from the account acquisition side, I'm talking about maybe there's 4 or 5 left. And so where have they gone? Some of them have gone out of business. Some have just different product line than they had 15 or 20 years ago. But I'm convinced that we have a real opportunity with our community bankers, and I'm talking about institutions up to 10 and 15 billion in assets, not just a billion and below. But we'll see how it works out. So, what's your little words of wisdom as we complete this session for the industry, from somebody who's been pushing the ball up the hill for what, 20 some years now?
Oh, just a few. You do have to keep looking forward. Business changes on an ongoing. Several things don't change. Good customer service does not change, but business and how you approach it and the products that you offer do change. And you can either be a leader or a follower. Being a leader is scary. Sometimes sometimes you're the guy that's creating the path. but there's a lot of information out there. If you use the information, you make a lot better decision. And that's one of the things I feel like I'm really good at giving my clients, is that extra information that they need, not to sway them one way or the other, but just to give them more information to be able to converse with their board, to converse with their superiors and whoever they need to, if this is something they want to do.
Well, Lisa, thanks for taking my offer to come back. I know I'm infringing upon your time again, so I appreciate you coming back and talking about some of these items that we just discussed. I'm going to have you come back again at some point, because I'm going to keep beating this drum about thinking outside the box, and you seem to be, of all the people I deal with, you're constantly thinking outside the box. So again, thanks for coming back for this session. That ends this session of A Stellar Conversation. Next time, we'll have Roger Powell, who's in the M&A business with a company called the Burke Group out of Atlanta, Georgia. Thanks for listening.